Uh, Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for day 2 of Building Life Sciences Adventures. I'm really delighted to have this panel today about social media and recruitment and career development, and that's kindly chaired by Priya. And before I hand you over, just to cover a few housekeeping points, if you don't mind having your microphones on mute, that would be great. Feel free to keep your cameras on, that's absolutely fine. That's up to you. And this session will be it is recorded, sorry, and will be available to watch shortly after. And if you have any questions, please do leave them in the chat box. I think we'll either pick them up at the end, or Priya, feel free to pick them up as we go along, as the discussion flows. And lastly, closed captions are enabled if you need accessibility. And so I'll now hand you over to Priya, and I hope you enjoy the session.
Hey, thank you, Mona Lisa, and welcome everyone. It's nice to meet you all on this Wednesday morning. Yeah, I'm chairing the session. My name's Priya. I'm a former research scientist who went into communications, and I work in the science and technology sectors. And today I have the pleasure of hosting a panel of my communications peers in the life sciences to share their expertise in recruitment, the use of social media in recruitment, and in to help you find a job. So I think first things first, it would be nice to understand from the audience's perspective, how many of you, I don't know if you can put up your hand, but how many of you are employers, and how many of you are here as recruits, like looking potentially for a new role or just wanting to learn more. So like, how many, if we could just see a show of hands, how many of you are employers looking to learn more in this space? Okay, Amelia? No? Okay, and how many of you are, potential recruits looking to find, okay, Amelia, great. And Laura? Fantastic. And then maybe the rest of you are in both camps or just wanting to learn more. So with no further ado, I will pass on to my fellow panelists to give a short introduction about themselves, and why they're looking forward, let's say, to participating in today's session. So yeah, I think if Kat, can you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Kat Arney. I'm the founder and Chief Creative Officer at First Create the Media. Like Priya, my background is in science, and then I spent a long time working in science and research communications. First Create the Media is a science communication agency specializing in the life sciences. So we work with innovative pioneers and the organizations that make up the ecosystem that supports them to help them communicate their messages to the people who can, make their ideas happen. So I'm really excited to talk about this because I think that social media, is a challenge. There are many different channels, and what do we choose to do with them? And I think there's some really, really great advice, hopefully, that will come out that everyone can be actioning straight away, just to help get themselves more out into the world in a positive rather than a scary way.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Kat. Mel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Priya. Hi, I'm Mel Toyne-Sewell. I am a bit like Kat. And Priya. I've did a science degree. I'm not sure if that counts, but then I moved into more the financial world and started at PricewaterhouseCoopers, did accountancy. Don't do it. And then I moved into communications, which was definitely the better thing, and took on and originally I was a generalist doing financial public relations for companies, both quoted and unquoted. But then I discovered I took on my first biotech, and then that everything clicked, and I went, yep, this is it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 23 years or so. But in that time, it's been really interesting just to see how social media has become such a key part of communications for companies, whether it's their news flow, but also from a recruitment point of view. So, and why am I here? Well, I'm quite interested to see if I can pick up a few tips as well. So I'll be very interested to hear the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. Sean.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm Sean. I'm our Principal Talent Acquisition Partner here at BenchSci. My role here is to recruit fantastic people, people like yourselves, across our company. And our company is basically designed to increasing the speed and quality of life-saving research, utilising the power of artificial intelligence. So a very, very big buzzword at the moment. My job is recruitment, has been for the past 10 years. But over the past few years, I have really lent into the employer branding side of things to utilise my recruitment experience, recruitment strategies, shall I say.
Thanks, Sean. Great to have you here. And Sue, last but very much not least.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Sookio, and I'm the founder of Sookio, which is a digital marketing agency based near the Science Park in Cambridge. And we focus on content creation, campaigns, strategy, and we work very closely with a lot of companies in the Cambridge biotech cluster. And I've been knocking around in social media since the early days, since before you could even post images on Twitter, and before Twitter sort of went a bit weird, as it has in the last year. But and so I've got this mix of being an employer, so I understand hiring, and I've seen different approaches and techniques sort of changing over the years from an employer and employee perspective. And I've also seen how social media has changed as well. So I'm hoping that today I can share quite a lot of useful tips that are good if you're trying to get into the industry, into this sector, but then also if you're an employer, the sort of tools and approaches that you can use. So, I think between all of us, we've got loads of interesting stuff to share.
Well, thanks, Sue. Yeah, I feel exactly the same as you. And also, as Mel said, learning from this group, it's absolutely fantastic opportunity. Like, obviously, I've been working in this area for like almost 10 years after research, but I think there's always more to learn. And so we hope that you, the audience, also take quite a bit away. And with that, I guess we should just kick off. So I think one thing we discussed, we had a bit of a preparation for this panel discussion today, and we talked about how social has a mixed audience. So there's, from an HR or jobs perspective, you have recruits anywhere from like looking for your first job through to people who are more senior and looking for more senior roles or more experienced positions. But also you have employers, and you have, a whole ecosystem of people out there that are all, in between. So I think in terms of the panel, do you have any kind of, before we move into more specific points, are there any kind of overall messages that you'd like to get across?
I can kick off in that, there are many different social media channels. I think primarily, when we had our pre-meeting, most of us were thinking and talking about LinkedIn, which is the primary channel for, I don't know, it's like Facebook for work, right? It's but I think the important thing, and I think Sue's got a lot more insights on this as well, is that different social media channels have different audiences and different purposes. But the important thing to know is that you need to think about it. And LinkedIn is definitely a channel that you should be thinking about if you want to hire and also be hired. I'd say if you're going to focus on one for now, that probably is the right one.
I think for me as well, the thing I'd like to get across in this session is just what an incredible opportunity social media gives you. So at the start of my career, so I'm a bit more kind of broadcast media and communications and that sort of side of things. And some people are a bit more sort of, proper life science type people today. So I was writing letters, I was writing to The Guardian to say, you got a job. Whereas now you can use LinkedIn, you can use it for research, you can use it for kind of connecting with people in advance and warming them up. So it doesn't have to be that you're sitting there patiently waiting for jobs to be advertised. There's so many opportunities to network and connect and just kind of make yourself visible so you can get on people's radar. And in my company, I have this kind of front bench approach. a bit like a football manager, where I'm kind of continually thinking about who I can have just warming up, you know, getting the trainers on, doing a few stretches on the side, because I know that things will always change in the company. Someone will always go maternity leave or move on, or will get a different contract, you know. So social media gives you that head start. And there's lots of ways that social media gets a bit of a, you know, negative press sometimes, but I always think it just gives you an incredible opportunity.
I think the one thing I'd want to get taken away today is the impact that social media actually has on what we do. We're in a golden age of media where it, you know, it influences what we watch, what we buy, what we eat, everything in what we do. And more often not in recent times, this social media can impact where we work if you're telling the right stories to impact people properly on the right platforms. I think that would be my biggest takeaway from today. If you can learn how to utilize social media to impact you and your recruitment strategies and what you're doing.
Sorry, I was just going to just take it from the other side, because also don't forget that you might be tracking people down and, you know, looking at their social media profiles and stuff. Employers will also be doing the same back to you. So make sure that the photograph that you have on your LinkedIn is a sensible business photograph, not the one from your you know, when you grow, what's the when you grow a silly moustache or so. I had a client who that was his LinkedIn photo. He was wearing a bandana and he had a handlebar moustache, and you're going, do I really want to do business or employ that kind of guy? So again, just flip it on its head, because I think we're very we assume that people aren't looking at us quite so closely. So just make sure that you have a clean profile.
Yeah, there's another little kind of tip to that as well, because the other thing is making sure that your LinkedIn profile does actually reflect you as you are now. Because particularly if I'm going to networking events, I'm thinking, oh, I really want to connect with this person or that person, I'll look them up on LinkedIn and like, who am I looking for in this room? And if you don't look like your current LinkedIn profile, it's a little bit problematic.
I saw that a lot after the pandemic, because everyone grew out their hair because we couldn't get to hairdressers. So suddenly I'd meet someone in a coffee shop post-pandemic, like, oh, I didn't really, you haven't got a beard in your LinkedIn picture, and you know. So yeah, that's a good point.
I think also,
I mean, go for it, Kat. Well, I was just gonna add, it's just like, you know, obviously it's like, you know, as you get a bit older as well, you have this great photo from 10 years ago, and then a number of people say, well, Priya, maybe it's time for a new one.
Yeah, it's like journalist bylines, they never age. But I think as well, from a company perspective, if you're running a startup, if you're starting up and you need to attract people, certainly LinkedIn and other social media channels, if you wish to use them, are a way that you can show that you're a company that has humans working for it. I think it is so important, because if you're a new company, no one has any idea of like who you are and what you're like and like what your vibe is, or even really what you actually do, because that's not always clear from a startup's website. I've seen enough of them. So I think it's a really great shop window to show what you're like and what the humans who work with you and the kind of human beings that you would like to attract into your team, because that really is it. Like, team is everything when you're building a business.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So in terms of how we want to conduct the rest of the session, we have a few sections. And the first one we wanted to look at was, and hopefully it's useful for everyone, best practice. So how, for example, do you build an online brand and brand personality? Now, this could be relevant to a company, so like a tech company or like something like that in the life sciences. It could also be, you know, what's your brand as an individual? So I know some of you have put your hands up saying that you are on the more recruitment side, looking for a job, etc. So yeah, if I could just hand over to the panel and talk about to hear your views on what that best practice should be. Who'd like to take it from the top?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think if you're specifically looking for a job or you're looking to hire people, I'll start from the hiring people, because that's mainly what I do from a day to day. So if you're looking to hire people, people want to connect with people. is the long and short of it. Your LinkedIn recently released a stat that you're 16 times more likely to engage with someone from their personal account rather than their page account. So when we start looking at these pages, who are we going to connect with? The people who are actively trying to connect with other people, or someone who shies away? I know who I'd want to reach out to. So the way we do that is by trying to use connecting points in our social media strategies to connect with people. So we had this kind of conversation not too long ago where when we all met up last week, and I was telling about how I connect with other people within my network. You know, we talk about benefits, all these kind of things. Like, I'm a parent, I have 2 wonderful boys, and you know, I often talk about what it's like being a parent, working remotely in recruitment and in my job. And the idyllic situation is that I connect with other parents, right? And I use different talking points to connect with different people. Now, I don't just tell my own story, because that would just only attract people like myself, like dads, you know, or parents, you know, something like that. So it's important to also not just tell your own story, but tell other stories as well. As a statistic, I think 80% of engineering at the moment is male focused. Terrible stat. So we need to do more from that. But how do we do more than that? We tell the story of women in the organization. You know, we get them to tell their stories, because I'm not going to go and tell someone else's story for them. So it loses all authenticity. And that's a really important part of being authentic during your, you know, your storytelling and what you're trying to get across. I think that's the basis of what you need to start off in terms of like trying to recruit, learning where you want to actually approach. Do you want to try and aim for the under-marginalized groups? What under-marginalized groups are there in your organization? Where do you want to try and approach first? Plan of where you actually want to go.
Can I, yeah, so suggestion for me, and this is sort of continuing on from what Kat was saying, and it's about getting the foundations right. So, and this can apply for your personal profile, but also as a business as well. And it's just, you can spend just a couple of hours getting the foundations right. And the nice thing about LinkedIn is that will just sit there doing its job for you. You don't have to update it too continuously. So a really nice attractive header. So let's say you're a photographer, you might want to get a shot of you in action taking photos, or maybe you've been speaking on stage, you know, so you're showing thought leadership, you're demonstrating it, or even something pretty and abstract. Have that as your top header, that really nice sort of personable, professional picture that also makes you look approachable. You know, it doesn't have to be you kind of all, you know, sort of closed and looking to business like in the 80s. And then just taking a little bit of time to go through the about section. Make sure you include some keywords about the sort of things that you do in there so people can read it at a glance. And then just going through the CV history, and just make sure you include all of your kind of your highlights, your selling points. And the nice thing is it only takes a couple of hours, and then it's sitting there just looking gorgeous. I mean, a thing that I see all the time is that people that have been on LinkedIn for quite a while, they don't know about the new features that come in. So you don't know that LinkedIn can give you the option of putting a header behind you, or you don't realize that you can add images to the logos for companies that you've worked at. So it is worth kind of going through. There's a features section as well, so like a highlight section, so you can put things in there like research papers that you've written, or presentations, or if you've won awards, you can put it in there. So that kind of housekeeping, you know, getting the foundations right is really brilliant. That, and also Google Business, are 2 of those things that you can do to spend a couple of hours, and then it just works wonders for you for years. So do that after the session.
For sure.
My advice.
I think there's an interesting thing. So it's interesting what Sean said about LinkedIn likes people. So if you are an individual trying to be hired, definitely make sure that your profile looks nice, and then think about the content that you're putting out. There's an interesting line between like authenticity and warts and all, like, you know, I don't need to, you know the contents of your toilet bowl. That kind of, like, you know, I think some people feel that by being authentic and real, they have to really splurge their guts out. And again, there's a potential employer looking at this. Are you framing the things that you think are important to you in a way that is sensitive and authentic? I think that it is worth thinking about. This is media. You need to mediate your appearance on it. That's my opinion as someone who's been in the media and PR a long time. I think it is a mediated medium. I think as well, it's if you're running a company, also make sure that your company LinkedIn page looks nice, be putting content on it, but also be aware that it will get much more traction if the people in your organization are then reposting and amplifying it. And also do put up pictures of people. LinkedIn loves photos of people. So as much as possible, making sure that your images contain people doing things. And that, yeah, if you put things on your company LinkedIn page, that real people are amplifying those, because that is the best way to attract attention to the people that you're trying to reach.
With that, Kat, I love your point about getting your people to share it. LinkedIn has this really weird tool. Like when you repost it, it doesn't go as far in terms of impressions and reach. I would encourage you, if you're an organization, to get your people to create their own post rather than reposting, because that will drive impressions to their network further than a repost will. It'll look nice, don't get me wrong, that there are lots of impressions and stuff, but if you're going to do it, like the employee generated content, like EGC stuff is wonderful, because it does help drive the impressions and like a much further reach across from your organization. LinkedIn is a wonderful, but sometimes, not very friendly tool.
Yeah, completely with you there, Sean.
If I can just add one point before we use up all the time, but the other thing, just to follow on from Kat and everyone's points really, is this thought leadership. I was talking to a CEO the other day, and he had just joined a company, and he was just quite keen to understand the types of people he was going to be working with. So what he did was he looked at his leadership team to see what they had posted, their thoughts on the company, or what they did, and he had a bit of a rude shock, because he realized that the two people that were actually posting really interesting stuff were actually either had left or were leaving the business. And actually all the people he was left to work with never wrote anything. And so again, this is where that sort of personal brand, putting some interesting thought leadership out there, whether it just to show a passion for what they are doing on a day-to-day basis, really important, for not only for that company to demonstrate its character, but for those individuals as well. So I just wanted to add that, and it's something that we're very keen to talk about with companies. You need to demonstrate you are the expert, so you have a passion for the area that you're in, and then people, if they're thinking, oh, who should I talk to about that, you're going to be top of their list. Sorry, Kat.
Yeah, no, I'd also add there, I think it's really great to get people doing this kind of stuff. I think you can sit there and think, oh God, every post has to be like a massive big thing, and I'm only going to do like, I'm going to do one and then I'll never do it again. With social media platforms, it is about kind of consistency, and it can be consistent little things as well. So it's better to post something really short, like, hey, saw this really great article, or like, fantastic event I went to, and do that on a weekly cadence rather than once every 2 months do something massive and then completely forget about it. And that goes for personal profiles, it goes for company profiles. The cadence of regular little things is much better than occasional big things, if you can manage the big things as well as the little things. But certainly don't think like, every post is a magnum opus that must be a massive piece of thunk leadership. It's just start. And also the more you start doing this, you get into it. I used to blog right back in the early 2000s, in the early days of blogging. And it was amazing to me that once I'd started, I started like, I've got no ideas, like, what am I going to blog about? And suddenly you start and you have millions of ideas, because creating content generates ideas. And it's a good way of actually thinking, what do I think? How do I articulate my ideas? So it helps you with your communication and how you think about the stuff that's going on in the ecosystem around you as well.
Can I share my share my framework on this? So it's exactly like Kat's saying, we talk about having a drumbeat all the time. So it's kind of little and often, just continually doing it. And so I developed this framework for LinkedIn quite a few years ago, which is really useful. So it's a rule of thirds. So if you think about all of the things that you post, and it's something that people say to me all the time, I don't know what to post about, you know, and there is that worry that every post has to be groundbreaking. So if you think of it in thirds, then a third of your posts to be about you and what you're doing. So for example, I'm in communications, I'm interested in life sciences. So let's say there's an interesting campaign that I see when I'm on the underground, then I might take a picture and I might put that on social media and say, oh, that's a really good example of copywriting. So that's kind of me. Or I might go to, I might post this morning to say, oh, I'm on a panel at One Nucleus, you know, so this is all me, talking about me and what I'm doing. So that's one third. And then your other third is looking outwardly. So for example, we just wrote a blog post at Sookio on AI tools and what we're all using in the company. And we might talk about where AI is going next, what's going on in the industry, like the bigger, outside, not us, what else is going on. And then your last third is just a general engagement. And the thing about LinkedIn, I know we're talking a lot about LinkedIn today, but I think it's really crucial in this discussion, is that even if you can't think of a starter post, you know, an original post yourself, even commenting on other people's and sharing them with a comment yourself is so valuable. It's really good. And that can help you get into the swing of it. So if you see it, sort of post about you, what you're doing, what you're reading, seeing, where you're going, who you're meeting, you've got networking, all that stuff about you, and then what's going on in the industry. These are the trends, these are the new developments, this is what's going on externally. And then just that kind of continual drumbeat, liking, engaging, sharing, retweeting, reposting, then that helps you get into that rhythm and into that cadence. And then before you know it, you're thinking, oh, I'm actually quite confident in this. Whereas before you start, it can feel a bit daunting. So try my rule of thirds. Let me know how you get on. Connect with us all on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe if all the panelists could drop their LinkedIn link URL into the chat. And you know, I just think with what we've been discussing, it's also like if you post publicly, like you have the option to post just to your network or to specific groups, or you can post publicly. You just never know who might be watching. And that could be like your employer, but it could be someone you didn't know. It's a great way to connect with people, share those thoughts, get them out there, and who knows what might happen next. Sean,
on your point there, that is such a good point in terms of visibility for people who might not necessarily have it within their organization. We can sometimes work in roles that don't necessarily connect with like key stakeholders across your organization, but there are, and I'm going to give rough estimates here from the last time I checked, like there are like 1 billion users on LinkedIn. I think about a quarter of those are active users, and only 1% of those active users are actually posting on LinkedIn. And more often than not, most of your company has a LinkedIn profile, and it's a great way to have some visibility across like the whole organization, what you're doing. I've met people we've got an office in Canada, and been over there, and randomly someone I'd never even met before was like, oh, Sean, how are you? Saw your post on LinkedIn. It's a nice, a really warm way to, like, you know, connect with people across your organization. But also my stakeholders know exactly what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, doing that thought leadership process. And it's a great way for you to demonstrate, you know, your abilities, what you can do, and you know, show off a little bit. Why not? You know, you've got to be your own cheerleader sometimes, and LinkedIn's the perfect platform to do so.
That's awesome.
Just to add on that, I don't think we're going to get to your points, Priya, at all. We're just going to freestyle it. But I was just going to say, if you are, say, for example, in an interview situation and you've done your homework and you've looked up all the people who are going to be interviewing, just be careful of the slightly stalkerish comments, which go, oh, yes, and I understand that you were at so-and-so in 1991 to 1995. Yeah, just be a little careful on that, because I don't know, maybe I'm just too English and I just get a bit kind of funny about that. It feels a little bit like they've been looking through my letterbox, you know. So that's just, yes.
So there's a corollary to that. It's like the internet is forever, and if you put it out there, people are going to find it. So this kind of comes back to do you think about what you choose to share and how you choose to frame it? Because you know, even if people aren't going to overtly go like, oh, I saw your thing on LinkedIn. Like, people do that to me all the time. It's like, oh, I saw on LinkedIn you're doing this. Even worse when I used to do a lot more on Twitter with drunk tweets. I've stopped doing that. Also, people, if you are on other social media platforms, you're like, oh, this is my personal thing, and this I separate church and state. If that's what you're going to do, don't be able to, because people will connect the dots. If someone puts your name into Google, you will find everything that is connected to your name, whether you're like, oh no, that's my professional LinkedIn profile, please only see this, rather than me, you know, pole dancing in Bermuda or whatever. I took those photos down, but this is the way that the world works. So
yeah, what
do consider what you're putting out.
When we had our cooking call, I was remembering back to this is many years ago, but when Twitter and LinkedIn had a sort of integration together, and I was watching with absolute horror late one Friday or Saturday evening as a woman who was tweeting. She was drunk and she was in a car park trying to find her car, wandering around with her car keys, trying to remember which one her car was. And this was also going out on LinkedIn as well. So because she was live tweeting it, and it's like, oh, please stop. And I swore to myself on that day that I would never drink and tweet. So I've always just had this policy, just something clicks in, right? You know you're getting too chatty, you're getting cross about politics, you know that you don't put this on social media, right? You know, it's like I have a little word with myself.
That's what WhatsApp groups are for. Keep it in.
Exactly. Or Slack channels.
It's like writing that angry letter to the council or your boss or the, you know, the teacher of your kids, you know. Write it. Actually, there's this fantastic communications podcast with David Yelland and another chap, and it's all about, if you've got something angry you want to say, write it, wait until the next day, and then throw it away. It's just not worth it, because you're going to end up regretting it. So again, and actually not quite so alarmist, but if you are writing something, a piece of thought leadership or whatever, write it, keep it in drafts, then the next day reread it and just make sure, is it making all the points I really want to make? Because also, you know, you may be able to write it easily like Kat, and just it all kind of bursts out, and you just sort of, or like me, you agonize. And the longer you agonize, the more, you know, you need to read it with clear eyes the next day. Without fail, I will have made a spelling mistake. But, you know, you just need that sort of clear view. And
that's
also,
great, guys.
do I really want to put this out?
Absolutely. So I think the digital profile, and Sean, please, and then we can move on maybe to the next point.
There was a question in the group that I think is relevant to this, from Laura D, around like how can we maximize LinkedIn to secure a job, and Sue, you kind of touched on this point as well about connecting with people, you know, commenting on stuff. If you are posting, and you should be, you know, to kind of advertise what you're doing, connecting with people and commenting on other stuff will make those posts and make those other people interact with your posts more. So interactions with other posts tells LinkedIn that you want to connect with more people. So if you I try to spend like maybe 20 minutes in the morning, you know, if I'm just sitting having a coffee, once my kids have gone to school and stuff, and I actually have 20 minutes. So then I'll sit with a coffee and I'll maybe go through some stuff. If I find something interesting, you know, comment on other people's stuff, and that then helps me show up on their pages as well on the right computer. So interact with, you know, the relevant people you want to be interacting with. Don't just do it with everyone. Just say, oh, a post, interact. Try and be really accurate. So if you want to interact with hiring managers, you want to interact with people from certain sectors, it's a great way to just be visible to the people that you want to be visible to. And I would say just separate some time to do that, and you can really kind of put yourself out there as well as your posting as well, because you want to make your intentions clear as well within your posts, and they'll be shown to who the relevant people need to be.
Fantastic. So I think the takeaway here is really, guys, get out there, just start experimenting and see what happens. And Vicky, you made a point. You valued the thought leadership and maintaining profile that Mel and Kat were discussing, and then you had a question about if you're just joining the industry or starting out, what kind of content might you appreciate seeing? So I think we've kind of covered this, but if we could just address Vicky's point before we move on. Anybody have a suggestion? just to get started.
If you just
you can do, sorry, just briefly, is it can feel a bit of a void, a bit of a vacuum when you're just getting onto the platform. So to kind of get into the mood, into the swing of it, just start following other companies and connecting with people in your immediate network, and then that will kind of get you into the zone, because every platform has a different kind of feel to it, you know. So Twitter feels one way, Instagram feels another. So if you start kind of immersing yourself in the platform, and then just starting to comment and like and engage, you know, so then that takes some of the pressure off you. You're not feeling like, oh, yeah, I've got to write these incredible posts. So that can be a good place to start, you know, just when you're just sort of dipping your toe in the water. And the other thing as well is building your network just widely. Just get into the habit whenever you meet people at networking, always follow up with a LinkedIn invite, and just kind of, you know, feel your way forward in that kind of way.
Yeah, it's also just about, what are you interested in, right? Because you want to be hired by someone who's like knows what you're interested in. You want to work in an industry or a job that is relevant to your interests. So what are you interested in? What do you think is like, oh yeah, this made me think, or I thought this was cool, whether it's a scientific paper or a, you know, a LinkedIn post or anything you've seen. Just what are you interested in? Be enthusiastic and share it, because the things that social media platforms really like are interesting, enthusiastic things, and that's what we like as people. I'd rather talk to someone who is interested and enthusiastic and wants to share something that they think is cool. So yeah, that's just be interested and enthusiastic would be a good tip.
I think there's a good point off the back of that, is like baby steps, like you would when you meet a person. Introduce yourself, like just take that first initial step to being like, hi, I'm Sean, this is what I do, this is what I'm looking for. Put yourself out there, and just literally, that's the first little baby step you've got to take. You know you better than anyone, so introduce yourself to your network, take it as the first step, and then you can start off your point there, Kat, you know, start talking, and then off the back of like what you're passionate talking about, because you know those topics then, and you're happy, should be, you know, passionate about talking about them. And it's a nice way to get the ball rolling. That's the first bit of advice I'd give anyone who's looking to start doing any kind of social media content. Introduce yourself to your network. And your network, I know we go back to LinkedIn again. LinkedIn gives you a nice tool where you can add 100 people a week. They don't all have to accept, obviously, but you know, you can 100 people a week can help you grow your network, however big you want it to be. You know, the more the better, but obviously make sure they're relevant connections to you. There's no point adding, you know, the sports director if you're looking to go into science. Okay, like there's a right way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to build on that actually, Sean. You along those lines, if you are connecting with someone you have never met before, you need to have a good reason to do it. Just sending them a let's connect, they're going to go, oh, you know, there is actually a tool going, I'm not going to take on this connection, so I have no idea who this person is. So you, to Sean's point, you know, you do need to introduce, you need to explain why you want to connect, and they, you know, and think about it, you know, what are they going to get out of it as well? So, you know, suggesting a connection with the CEO of AstraZeneca, if you're very newly out of university, they're going to be going, that's a bold move, but I doubt they will accept your connection. So there needs to be a good reason for it.
No, really
just a small comment. I mean, you know, good on you if you have got that confidence, but you need to have a good, just a little bit of a sort of introduction. This is why I'm connecting with you.
I think flattery goes a long way as well. So if I'm at a networking event, I'm a bit old school and I like business cards because I just like the exchange of it, you know, and it enables that conversation. Whereas nowadays there's various QR codes, you can do it with your phone straight into the LinkedIn app, but then you've got no reason to continue the conversation. So I tend to do the business card thing. Oh, what lovely cards, isn't that great, etc. And then the next day I'll go through them, and then that gives you the opportunity to say, oh, I loved our conversation when we were standing at the coffee thing yesterday, or it was so interesting what you had to say about this thing. And I was saying this from a very genuine, you know, not faking it, but it allows you to continue the conversation. And people, they love it if you genuinely say, oh, you know, I've been following your posts on LinkedIn or whatever, so interesting, you know, wondered if we could connect because I'm doing this at the moment. So if you treat it like a human interaction in the same way that you would if you're meeting face to face, then that goes a long way. You know, I think we've all had these sales introductions where someone connects on LinkedIn, boom, you know, they're sliding into your DMs trying to flog you something, and you're thinking, God, calm down, you know, only connected 10 seconds ago, go away. So, you know, I'm regularly unconnecting, disconnecting with people. So yeah, just be nice, you know, be positive, be flattering, and, you know, just in the same way you would if you met people in real life.
I love Lucy's comment. I saw unsolicited connection requests with no message compared to handing someone a business card and running away. We've all been there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it is a human interaction at the end of the day, whether it's online or in person. I think it's good to just follow that as a guideline, but also there are some cultural differences potentially as well, depending on where you are. Obviously, we're in the UK, but I'm Canadian by background, like North American. Sometimes so you have to kind of gauge it, I think, and that comes from partly just trying things out and experience.
I think I work for a Canadian company, and there are certainly two major like culture differences. Like I don't want to be like stereotype. Canadians are very friendly and very like eager to kind of talk, whereas us Brits are a little bit standoffish. So I was like, why is this person messaging me? Like, but
Sean, I have every sympathy. I had to work with Priya. There was a big cultural divide when we worked together. We had to keep on telling her not to speak to us first thing in the morning. You know? Like being on the tube with someone. Oh, why are you talking?
Oh, thanks, Mel, for all your patience.
So it was tough.
So yeah, I think another thing that came up in our discussion or kind of prep, we've talked about some really good tips that people can walk away from. I think if we can turn it around a little bit, just for the purposes of this discussion, to focus on employers a bit, and how you would address some of what you just said to employers. And then also, I'd really love if we could hit on some of the trends that we discussed earlier.
So I can go first. I think as I said at the beginning of the session, LinkedIn particularly, or any social media platform that you choose to be on as a company, as an employer, it is your shop window. So and it's also important, like different social media platforms are different. They have different grammar, they have different kind of vibe. So, you know, you can't just repost something from LinkedIn onto Instagram. It's not going to work. But assuming that LinkedIn is your main social media platform, it is your shop window. It's important to look like humans work for your company. And I think there's a few things, and I'd quite like Sean to talk about this, about the automatic tools, the kind of tools that LinkedIn has for job applications and things like that. And there's one really important thing to know. If you're a small company, putting up a job advert that people can apply for through the LinkedIn mechanic, the LinkedIn system, you can only have one job ad up at once. But I'll talk to Sean to talk more about like how that whole system works, and is it a good idea for employers to be like actually trying to get candidates to apply through LinkedIn?
I think so. That is a great point. LinkedIn it's expensive. Like no matter what, especially if you're a smaller organization just starting up and you're trying to attract candidates, if you want to reduce the cost as much as possible. If you're working in a startup, you like I work in a startup, so my biggest thought was, how can I reduce costs in the talent acquisition space? I know I can start using kind of employer brand strategy, employee generated content to reduce the money I'm spending on adverts. Because they're thousands and it's an extra expense you typically don't need. So if you get that free advert and you're driving people to your page by posting content, you're reducing your costs exponentially to begin with anyway. Yeah, LinkedIn has some great tools, but they are also very expensive tools. And you've got an absolutely free tool to use, which is yourself and your computer that's probably given to you by your company. You can post all this free content, and this free content is so much more engaged with than stuff from your company page. Does that help?
Yeah, this is great. So if we, I think we've mentioned the word automation and AI. I'd be really keen, and Sue, you just mentioned that you've written an article in this space. I think, could we talk a bit about the role of automation and AI in this particular context of like recruitment, but also applying for jobs, etc.? and how, like, what are the potential benefits? Do we buy it if you've written something on AI, etc.?
I think there's authenticity we talk about is key. It's painfully obvious when you see someone who's right. Can you write me a blog post about International Women's Day? Okay. And it's just like really generic stuff, really unauthentic. Like, and it's like an essay, which someone who would probably who's posting a lot probably doesn't do. But I think there's a cool way to use it. Like, I think I was very open about this. If you've met me for longer than 5 minutes, you can probably tell the way I speak, I've got ADHD and I'm very kind of energetic with what I do. And sometimes, I get a bit of brain fog when it comes to like creating content and I want some clarity with it. So I use AI to help me clear the fog. So if I've got an idea, to use International Women's Day as an example, now I want to create a post around this. What are some key thoughts, or what are some key factors about International Women's Day that I can talk about? I'll look at those factors, but then I'll write them in my own words just to help me clear up something. Never, ever will I use that to write posts for me. You can probably tell by my posts because they're littered with grammatical errors. And, it's also painfully obvious that an AI didn't write them. And there's free tools within AI as well. ChatGPT has a free version you can use. It does help kind of list you off some ideas as well. You can ask it to, as long as you're putting in the right prompts, you can ask it to help you, assist you with what kind of content you're looking to do. So, I'm looking at creating a post for X. What are some key factors I need to be aware of? What are some key factors for this role? The AI will give you those answers and help you along the way. I'll give you like the right little, you're prompting the prompt to give yourself a prompt. Bit of inception, but yeah, there's a great way to use it. There's an authentic way to use it. And it is a time saver for sure, especially if you do suffer with like that kind of brain fog stuff and you want to be able to create content, but sometimes you're struggling to. There's two sides to it. I think as long as it's used properly, I think we're in a good space.
One thing to mention, which I hope will be useful to anyone applying for jobs at the moment, is the way I see it, there's a bit of a split in the approach. If you're a small business like me, so I've set it up myself, I care about the things so much, I live and breathe it, I've been through ups and downs and, I'm emotionally invested in this thing. Then when I'm hiring people, I'm looking at it from one perspective. If I was an HR team in a large corporate, if I was in GSK, with thousands of people all over the world, I go home at the end of the day, I get paid last Friday of the month. I don't, it's not the same thing. And the larger corporates will use lots of automation, lots of screening programs. And they will be, when you apply to them, you need to apply in a certain way. If you look at the company, look us up on LinkedIn, for example, you get a sense of the people. So if you're applying to a startup, you will also see, okay, this person, they've spun out of Cambridge University, okay, they're interested in this, they've got a particular passion for this. Then you need to tailor your application in a slightly different way. And so I can only speak from a smaller business perspective, but we are crying out for covering letters. We want some sort of connection. We want to know who you are, not just your CV, because that shows to me where you've been, but a covering letter shows where you're going. So it says, well, I want to work for you because I've looked you up, I've seen your team, I can get your company culture. And so for me, when I get a covering letter, that is amazing, because I'm thinking I get maybe 250 applications, 3 covering letters, and people outside the system, my framework, are not going to know that. So that's one handy thing to tell you. And then the other thing is that when I get one come in that's written with AI, because I'm hardly getting any, so it's really obvious, and the first one I received, I thought, wow, it's amazing. They've really taken time to look up, what the job spec is. And then I read on, I thought, well, hang on, there's something a bit uncanny valley about this. It just didn't quite ring true. And then I realized every paragraph started with additionally, moreover, furthermore. And it had cleverly taken our about page, sort of sliced and diced that with the job spec. And it didn't make sense, it kind of made sense, and then it kind of didn't. So yes to tailoring your application in a different way for larger organizations and smaller. Yes to using AI for research and prompts and that kind of thing. But for smaller businesses, if you use that to actually write your whole covering letter, you'll be found out. You won't last. You'll be given a proper task to do, and you won't be able to do it. So I just wanted to share that, because if you're not on this side of the table, how are you ever going to know?
It's extremely valuable, Sue. Does anyone else want to add to that? Because I think this is the future, right? So how do we harness it? Mel.
I have a bit of an apocryphal story, and can't remember whether Priya might have been aware of this, but we were recruiting for someone. We always do a writing test, and it was before AI had come in. But even so, you could look up stuff, and we always ask someone to write a press release. We give them a kind of bit of a brief, and off they go. And they copied and pasted and edited very badly a press release that we had actually written for a client. So we were kind of going, this looks familiar, but the copy and paste of vast chunks of text. So and kind of going back to the AI bit, what you write is going to be read by humans. So you need to make sure it is written by a human. And Sean's point about the brain fog, and actually, yes, sure, use ChatGPT. I use it quite a lot if I'm writing an article, and I'm kind of thinking, well, what are the sort of key points I need to make sure I cover up? Use it absolutely in that way as a prompt, but don't rely on it, especially if you're going into, particularly if you're going into a sort of communications job specifically. We need to know that you can write, not the app on your machine, which is going to be doing it for you. That's the whole. But we want to employ a human being rather than a chatbot.
I've got a tool to recommend if anybody wants one as well. So there's a tool, there's a free version, and it's called Human Linker, and you can attach that to LinkedIn. And then let's say you've got a job interview with someone, then you can look at using AI, it will assess their profile for you. So if you know that they are very kind of curt and blunt and very factual and like data, then you know that in the interview you can kind of, talk in that way to them. Or you might discover that they're very kind of warm and friendly, and they like coming up with ideas on the fly, and they're very spontaneous. And so this Human Linker tool will kind of give you this sentiment of them. So it's quite fun. I've got it attached to LinkedIn. So of course, the first thing you do is get it to view your own profile, but it is very helpful, so I'm trying not to rely on it too much. But it is useful for us when we're going to meet clients for the first time, because we can just do a little bit of background research and make sure that we tailor the discussion so that we know that we're going to engage them in the right way. So give that one a whirl. It's French, which is nice instead of out of Silicon Valley. Anyway.
Yeah, Sue, that's really interesting. I guess my only question would be, some people's writing style is a bit different to their interpersonal kind of speaking style. So how accurate have you found it?
Has it got my age wrong, in the wrong direction? Thanks for that. So this is the thing. It's like Sean was saying, use it as a prompt and for research, but don't rely on it 100% for anything that you do.
There is a big there's a big big talk around this at the moment, like with generative AI and the leaps and bounds it's making. And what you'll see is across this industry as well, like BenchSci is an example of that. So that's not me selling that. It's an AI tool that assists people, and an AI can very, very much help you and assist you with your day-to-day. And I think that's what it should be. The key word there is assist, not do your work for you. Everyone's going to be using some form of generative AI in the next few years. Most people are now. Like we've all used, probably in this room, used some form of AI in like the past 2 years. And I think people will continue to leverage using that over the next few years, especially when new releases come out. There are new things that come out. I think we spoke before about, so you mentioned that kind of cover letters. There's an AI called Teal. It will read the job spec and copy the, I'll probably give someone some tips here, like read the job spec and then it will help you to create a cover letter specific to that job spec to help you try and, get your foot in the door with that role. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that will work. And I think if you want to use it, go ahead and use it. But also at the same time, to Sue's point, there are people like Sue who don't want to see that. So you are rolling a bit of a dice. I'll be honest with you. If there are roles, if you're looking for a company that's high amount of roles and high amount of job openings, it's probably okay to use, in all honesty. But if you're, so you mentioned that you're a smaller organization, so you can spend the time really deep diving into people's profiles, cover letters. I would try and steer away from using an AI tool because it could easily found out.
And I think it's important to stress, if you are building, this is building life science adventures. If you're building a startup, the team that you recruit at the beginning, the people that you recruit are everything. So really, like, take the time to make sure that you're attracting the kind of people that they know, like what your company values are, what it's like to work with you, who works for you, what excites you, and take the time to really build that team. And on LinkedIn, it is an amazing way to showcase what you care about and help to attract the right kind of people to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So I suppose we're open for questions. So feel free to, if you want to put on your video or put up your hand or drop a question into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So I'd just wait for a few moments just in case anyone has a question now. Anyone? Just anything that's come up, you're kind of wondering, how do I go forwards, or any comments on anything anybody said? Yeah. Well, I tell you what, while we're waiting for questions, we also have, oh, Mel.
I just have a quick comment.
Yeah.
More about keeping your LinkedIn connections up to date, because it's the whole network. It's so important. Even a dinosaur of my age, having a good network is so important. So, and this is what we do with our clients, but also I think on a personal level, every 6 months or so, or even more frequently if you've got time, just have a review of who you are connected with. If it's someone you haven't spoken to and are very unlikely to ever speak to, just prune it down, make sure you are following the people you should be following. Again, it's just doing a little bit of housekeeping now and again, just to keep it relevant and up to speed and important for what you want to be recruiting. 6 months is a long time if you're a young company. Things can change very quickly, but also for you personally, your needs, requirements, at the start of your career are very different when you're 20 years in. So
I've got another kind of thing to add. It was a risk that we talked. So one of the clients that we've worked with, we manage a lot of LinkedIn for our clients, the kind of startups and scale ups in the life sciences. And we had one client that was like, we don't want to talk about any of our people on LinkedIn. Like, we don't want photos. We don't want to talk about them, because they were so worried that they would be poached. And it was a real concern that by highlighting that they had these amazing people working for them, that other companies would just come in and slide into their DMs and steal them away. And I was like, that is so short-sighted, because it's an amazing way to make your team feel valued and highlighted and special. And if people are going to cheat, they're going to cheat. Like, if a recruiter can slide into one of your team's DMs, they're going to do it anyway. And if they're going to go, they're going to go anyway. But actually making them feel seen and valued is a really amazing way of giving, and it's a cheap way of giving someone a really great boost. And I think actually helps to encourage people in your company, your organization, as you're growing. So if that is a worry, that you don't want to showcase people because you're worried that people will see who you've got, I would say that I think that's misplaced.
Yeah, I think because to the point of that, like, employer branding is the representation of your business externally and internally. So how people feel about your organization from both sides. And it can literally, if you're posting about your people, it can reduce retention, make your people feel proud of where they work, put the fire back under them, that they might have start to dwindle, and the outside representation is then, flourishing as well. You happy people make good workers make a great company, and great companies typically make good money. And I think that's what a lot of people are keen to see.
And I think it's, to add to that, people do move on from one job and they move on to another one, and they could move on to a really great role having worked at your business, right? And don't you want potential recruits to see that actually having worked at your company was a huge benefit to them? and encourage people to apply. So I think there's not a lot to be lost.
Yeah, that's something that we do all the time, just continually kind of bigging up team members, because they're all brilliant people doing brilliant things. And then it's really nice. So when we are hiring for a new role, it comes through all the time in the interviews. People say, oh, I looked you up, looks like you've got a great company culture. And, you know, and I'm able to say, yeah, it's really genuine. You know, I really do like working with these people, and I like promoting the stuff they do because it's all really good. So, you know, like you say, it's good for everybody.
Brilliant. We have just one more minute, so I'm going to give another, just in case we have another, just one more question. Of course, hopefully we'll all connect on LinkedIn, and if you have other questions, you can reach out to us directly. You can reach out to One Nucleus with any questions, and I'm sure they'll be happy to connect with us, and we can happy to give you a response. Is there anything else? Then I'd like to do a really quick, super quick round robin, and if there's anything else the panelists would like to add, it has to be super quick because we're right on time.
If anyone looking to ideas on how to start posting, I have a link to so a cost-free way of how to create content. I'll chuck it in the chat. It's a blog I wrote, an article I wrote like a few weeks ago. If you want to check it out, help you kind of take your first baby steps into doing it, please take a read. If it's of any interest, let me know, or if you have any questions, happy to help.
Brilliant. Anyone else?
I've got a very quick one. There is actually a really nice little tool on LinkedIn that you can actually make your own URL. So it's quite a nice one. It means you're not, I mean, I've got a weird name anyway, but it means that you're not kind of Jane Smith 125478. You can actually own your own URL, which is quite, it kind of gives you a bit more, strengthens your own personal brand.
That's super cool.
I'd just say, like, give it a go, and once you start, you'll get the wheels turning. But don't be scared.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been fantastic. I hope everyone, audience and panelists and organizers have all taken something away. And yeah, we look forward to staying in touch. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Priya. That was really
Thanks, Priya.
fun and informative.
Thanks, Priya.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a quick reminder before we set off, if that's all right. This session will be available shortly to watch after, so please don't worry if you've missed anything. The next session, we are back in an hour's time at 12:30 for how do big pharma and startups compete for the right people. So social media will definitely come into discussion as well, so do join us, and as Priya said, by all means do reach out at any time. We'll be happy to help. So thank you, everyone, and all the panel. That was really great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yay.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.